This is my top 10, my latest mock draft. You can find on CBSSports.com. Ryan Wilson along with Bryant McFadden. B-Mac, let's start at the top there with number 1 in this mock draft trade. Ahead Washington moving up from 2 to 1 to get their quarterback of the future. I did a mock draft about a month and a half ago, B-Mac, and Washington fans were quite unhappy that I had them taking a quarterback. They wanted offensive line help. They thought that Sam Howell was going to be the guy. Ron Rivera's since been fired. Sam Howell is not going to be the long-term answer. Jacoby Brissett is a veteran who's not the long-term answer. How do you like the fit of Caleb Williams and that new, for going to a team that's going to have a new coach and a new general manager, and it feels like a market that could welcome a new owner and a face of the franchise to get winning football back to Washington?
Yeah, I love it. I love it. For Washington, it makes sense because, as you stated, they don't have their future quarterback on their roster currently. I mean, Sam Howell was given the keys to the car, didn't go very far. In comes Jacoby Brissett, played pretty good football, but we know he's not the long-term answer either. So if you're going up just one spot, Washington, that's all it takes, one spot. It makes sense for all parties involved. For Chicago, if you're going to keep Justin Fields, you move right back to get the guy that you want, and you get your second-round pick that you gave the Commanders in the Montez Sweat trade. So it makes sense for all parties involved. I think it's a slam dunk. And instantly, whoever the new head coach is for the Commanders, he's coming into a situation knowing that he has a quarterback that he wanted, he got, and he can build the offense around.
And we talked about it. The trade down scenario is here, the mock draft trade scenario, that is. And it may seem a little rich, but the Bears are going to have a ton of offers. And just like a year ago, when they traded from 1 to 9 and allowed the Panthers to move up to get Bryce Young, they got a boatload in return, and they parlayed that into picks that helped that team immediately in terms of those rookies. Darnell Wright, the right tackle, started, had a great season. Tyreek Stevenson, the cornerback out of the U, played a lot of snaps and played at a high level. We talked about Marvin Harrison, who they get in return. Let's talk about Drake May, who I have going number 3 to the New England Patriots. We still don't know what Bill Belichick's fate is going to be, and I don't think the Patriots can come out of this draft without a quarterback. You think Drake May makes sense here? Would you go in another direction, B-Mac? What are you doing if you're the GM of the Patriots?
Quarterback for sure. Either Drake May or Jaden Daniels. It depends on, how they feel about either guy. I think clearly you have to go get a quarterback. Bailey Zappi is not the answer. I think they're ready to move on from Mac Jones. Had Malik Cunningham there as well. I mean, the quarterback has been an issue for them over the last few years. But, you got to find a guy who you have confidence that he can develop and be consistent. You know what I mean? Not just give you a flash here or there, but a guy that can be consistent. And, Drake May is the number 2 quarterback on most draft analyst boards. I wonder how far the separation is between Drake May and Jaden Daniels, though. That's for me, because if you look at Jaden Daniels, you look at Drake May, clearly Jaden Daniels was the better quarterback a year ago. He was a more consistent quarterback. He was the bigger playmaker, and just his running ability. Not saying that Drake May doesn't have any mobility, but he's not the type of runner that Jaden Daniels is. I mean, Jaden Daniels led LSU in rushing. The very first time I think a quarterback was able to do that, because they've had such reliable running backs, but he was just that type of playmaker. So that could be a close decision, but I think ideally for sure, they got to go draft a quarterback.
I'm with you about the Jaden Daniels as QB2 conversation, whoever that may be. I talk about it with Rick Spielman on the podcast. How often are we wrong about quarterbacks, number 1? And how often is it 4 or 5, 6 years from now you are finding out that guys like, hey, Lamar Jackson shouldn't have been the 32nd overall pick. So we'll find out in due time, but that's certainly a fair conversation worth having. You mentioned Jaden Daniels. Let's go to number 6 here, where the New York Giants currently find themselves. B-Mac, if I said to you over the summer, hey, man, the Giants are going to draft a quarterback, and it's Jaden Daniels, the guy they ran out of Arizona State, what would you have said? And then after you answered that, how do you like this fit now?
I would have said, what? Really? Like, really? In the top 5? That's what you're telling me? I wouldn't believe it. I wouldn't believe it because of Jaden Daniels not saying that he didn't play well a year ago for LSU, but what we saw this year warranted him winning a Heisman. Like Joe Burrow, like numbers. So he surprised everyone, and he showcased that he's a big-time playmaker. But this makes sense for the New York Giants, because I think it's safe to say that most New York Giants fans, they're tired of Daniel Jones. They're tired of Daniel Jones. They're tired of waiting. They're tired of hoping. And when you look at what's going on throughout the National Football League, you see other teams having more stability at the quarterback position. You see teams with young quarterbacks having more stability at that said position. That's what the New York Giants want. They want that type of guy. You talk about a guy getting $40 million per year and not delivering the goods. Yes, he got injured this season, but before he was injured, he was struggling. And then in comes Tommy DeVito and Tyrod Taylor, and they provided more of a spark with the same offensive teammates than Daniel Jones did. So I think it makes sense, and this is what you do. If you draft Jaden Daniels 5th, if you retain and keep Daniel Jones, you're basically telling both players, listen, you will determine who plays and for how long. Daniel Jones, we're not saying that we drafted him to bench you. We're saying that we drafted him to play him if you're not ready. And I think that's where you provide a quality sense of competitiveness in the locker room, in the building. So I think that would be okay. I think Giants fans will be okay with that as well, Ryan, because like I said, I know they got to be sick and tired of waiting on Daniel Jones.
Well, I know one Giants fan, our good buddy, coordinating producer Scott Riley, is okay with the idea of taking a quarterback. He's seen enough from the Giants quarterbacks. And the other thing about Daniel Jones, he signed that long-term deal, but they can get out of it after next season. The other thing to note, why did Brian Daboll get hired in New York? In part because of what he did with Josh Allen in Buffalo as the offensive coordinator. So he know he can make it easier for a young quarterback to have success. Let's stay in New York. Let's stay in the Meadowlands. Go to pick number 10 here, where the New York Jets currently find themselves. They would love offensive line help, but I had 3 offensive linemen go off the board before the Jets got a chance to select. I have them taking wide receiver Malik Nabers out of LSU, who caught all sorts of passes all over the field from Jaden Daniels. Garrett Wilson desperately needs help, and I know this because I watched the Jets play and because Garrett Wilson said the other day this was the worst year of his football life, even though he put up some pretty good numbers. How do you think about Malik Nabers here going off the board as wide receiver 2 to the Jets after Marvin Harrison Jr.?
Yo, I love Malik Nabers. I mean, he's the second best wide receiver in college football, in my opinion, behind Marvin Harrison Jr. But my question to you, and my question to the New York Jets fans that are watching us, would you prefer Malik Nabers or Brock Bowers? Because in your mock, Brock is still available, and Brock is like a unicorn at the tight end position. He's not just a one-trick pony catching footballs, running pass routes. He's a big-time beast in the running game as well. We haven't seen a tight end like Brock Bowers come through college football in quite some time. Heck, if he stayed healthy last year, he probably would have got an invitation to New York for the Heisman Award. So if you're telling me Brock Bowers is available and Malik Nabers is available, Aaron Rodgers returning, Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson. Yes, Tyler Conklin played pretty good football for them a year ago, but the talent that Brock Bowers has and has displayed since day one, stepping foot on campus there in Athens, he is a big-time playmaker. Which direction do you go? And which player will improve the offense faster than the other?
That's a great point, and something to keep in mind, and you touched on it, B-Mac. Brock Bowers he wasn't a great blocker coming into this season. He improved greatly at that spot, and we know what he can do as a pass catcher. And I'll ask you this quickly. I think he's a better player coming out, more well-rounded player. He might not win the foot race, but he's a better player than Kyle Pitts, who went top 6 a few years ago to the Falcons. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that, and that was my issue with Kyle Pitts going as high as he went. It was like he was one-dimensional. He was one-dimensional. He was a guy that was extremely fast, pretty good hands, but when you talk about putting his hand in the dirt and being an end man on the line of scrimmage, he wasn't super impactful. Brock Bowers can be that guy for you. And now what we're seeing when you talk about tight ends like Travis Kelce, Laporta with the Detroit Lions, think about how much better Jared Goff is adding a guy by the name of Sam Laporta to their offense. Think about what Mark Andrews has meant to Lamar Jackson. You know what I mean? These tight ends are super important now, especially the way how they're used. So that will be the question for New York Jets fans. Malik Nabers, Brock Bowers. Which player do you believe will improve your offense faster than the other? And you kind of get in 2-1 with Brock Bowers because, of course, he's not a wide receiver. He's not as fast as Malik Nabers. Well, we don't know because we haven't yet to see him run. But one thing we know he provides is catching, running, blocking, and you can put him in the running game as well because we saw that from UGA utilizing him in Jets reverses and things like that. So we have to wait and see. I can tell you this much, too, before I move on, Ryan. If he goes to the combine and runs anything in the 4.4, that might answer your question.
You've actually already convinced me. I think he makes the most sense here based on what you said because of his versatility. He's a matchup nightmare no matter where he lines up. All right, let's take a quick look at my top 10 here. And then before we get to break, B-Mac, a little tease based on what you just said here. So you see Caleb at the top there and then Malik at the bottom and the quarterbacks that went in between. When we come back, where exactly does Brock Bowers end up in this mock draft? We'll talk about that right after this. Here are picks 11 through 18 in my latest mock draft. You can find that on CBSSports.com if you're so interested. Had a bunch of quarterbacks go off the board in the top 10, exactly 0, 11 through 18. But B-Mac, let's start with pick 13. You made your bones as a cornerback, two-time Super Bowl champion. Let's go to the Raiders. And I have them taking Nate Wiggins, the cornerback out of Clemson. When I watched him over the summer, long, fast, athletic, consistently at the catch point down the field. Didn't offer much in run support. He got better in the fall, and I thought he made his case as cornerback 1. What do you think about that argument, and what do you think about his fit in Las Vegas?
Now, I love Nate Wiggins. I think he will be the first corner to come off the board. I love his ability to really stay in the hip pocket of pass catchers. He plays with a lot of fire. I love that as well. You know, you gotta have a short-term memory playing the cornerback position. He displayed that skill set, that mindset while at Clemson. So I think he's a first-round talent for sure. My question to you is, do we really believe it will be the Raiders? Because Aiden O'Connell is the quarterback for the Raiders right now. Antonio Pierce seemed to have a liking to Aiden O'Connell because he made that move when he became head coach to say, Aiden, you're our guy. Will they keep Antonio Pierce as the head coach? And if they do, is he willing to stick with Aiden O'Connell as the future face of the franchise moving forward? Or if they decide to go elsewhere at the head coaching spot, will that head coach come in with a different mindset in who Aiden O'Connell is, and will he be willing to stick with him? So if they have another answer, if that's their logic, then of course I think this would be a great position to go get Nate at the cornerback position. But if they don't feel confident that Aiden O'Connell can be their long-term answer, who knows? Maybe they might consider trading up or take some of the quarterbacks that could be available still on the board. You know, if Bo Nix is there, J.J. McCarthy, we don't know exactly how, even though in your mark you have, you know, Michael Penix coming off the board along with Jaden Daniels and Drake May and Caleb Williams, but who would be the 5th quarterback that would be available for the Raiders? Or would they move back to try to go get a quarterback later in the first round? But I think that is a more concern for me, Ryan, is are you willing to stick with Aiden O'Connell? Has he done enough for you to say, you know what, Aiden, you're our guy. We're not going to address the quarterback position early in the draft. We're going to address other positions, and we're going to hand you the keys.
No, there has to be a plan with the quarterback position, no doubt about it. In fact, I just solved the plan while you were making your case. You're going to trade up. You're going to take Jaden Daniels. Problem solved. How you like him in Las Vegas? That feels like a pretty good fit, right? All right, let's go to pick 14. We just talked about this young man a moment ago. How do you like the idea of Brock Bowers landing with the Saints? Now, they have quarterback issues as well long term. All the quarterbacks off the board. I think Brock Bowers makes sense here. You could go wide receiver, but they have Chris Olave. He needs help. And for the reasons that you made earlier for the Jets, I think Brock Bowers gives you that versatility in New Orleans as well.
Chris Olave, Shaheed, Brock Bowers, Alvin Kamara, Derek Carr. You can say whatever you want to say about Derek Carr. When he's protected, he still can sling it. He still can sling it. I mean, we saw that towards the end of the season for them. He was still slinging it when he was given the protection that he needed. So if he had a weapon like Brock Bowers, no question, if he's available there, I mean, he's a top 10 talent for sure. I mean, look at, you know, where he is in all draft prospects. He's a top 5 talent. So that is an area of need for them. They brought back Jimmy Graham because they were trying to look for some type of tight end production. That's how bad they were. That's how desperate they were when it comes to tight end production. So yes, outside of that, maybe edge. You know, Carl Granderson had a pretty good year. I think he had around 8.5 sacks, something like that. That was huge for them. Cam Jordan didn't really do a lot. He only had 2 sacks a down year compared to what he's done in years past. So if a Jared Verse is available for them, I know you have him going to the Minnesota Vikings in your mock, but if they don't take an edge guy, you know, maybe a guy like Jared Verse, because they need some edge help, especially to, you know, start almost that time to start preparing for life after Cam Jordan whenever he's willing to walk away. Even though he didn't have a good year a year ago, I still think he has something left in the tank, but you can never have enough pass rushers.
That's the absolute truth, and that's something that Rick Spielman has said plenty of times. You mentioned the Vikings there. Rick, of course, drafted Danielle Hunter. We'll see how that works out for Minnesota and what they decide to do in this draft. But Big Mac, that's it for us here.